Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome to another episode of Mingles with Jingles. I might have to keep this one brief this week because the weather is unpleasant. Wow. So you've probably heard about if you live in Western Europe, you've just experienced the heat wave that's been sweeping the area. Britain didn't get away with it either. Wow, it's been warm. We just recorded the 3 hottest consecutive days in June ever, or at least since they started keeping records. It has been unbelievable. Something I just saw on the BBC News weather site that made me laugh. And when I say laugh, I mean in the sense of I'm fake laughing, but the tears are real. There's a place called Merrifield in Somerset, which recorded a temperature of 36.7 centigrade, which surpassed England's 36.1 centigrade record, which had been set just a day or two before in the same week in Gosport, Hampshire. And that had broken the long-standing record for the month of June, which had been set and equalled in both 76 and 1957. So that was in Gosport, Hampshire. I live in Gosport, Hampshire. Like I said, it's been getting a bit emotional. Oh, and these temperatures, 36.1 degrees in Gosport, 36.7 degrees in Merrifield in Somerset. These aren't, well, they are records, but they're only records for the month of June. July and August are going to be worse. Well, not necessarily. There are some extreme conditions at the moment, but they are potentially going to be worse. And yes, Australia, I know, bloody whinging poms, you need to harden the fuck up, mate. Yes, I know you regularly get temperatures that hit 40 degrees Celsius in Australia's summer, but Australia, it's a dry heat. Yeah, 40 degrees is nasty, but I'll take 40 degrees dry over 35 degrees with 80% humidity and no wind any day of the week. It's completely different. Well, anyway. In other news, tech bros have just invented things that already exist again. If you don't know what I'm talking about, do you remember how Uber came along? And Uber was, it was generally good at first. It was basically, it wasn't exactly revolutionary technology. Uber was basically a taxi, but with an app and without a taxi driver. And that last bit's fairly significant because not just anybody can be a taxi driver. You need an encyclopedic knowledge of your local roads in order to get your license as a taxi driver. But Uber kind of bypassed all of that. Anybody could be an Uber driver. You just needed a car and a clean license. But it was only possible because of things like Google Maps and GPS. Until those technologies existed, Uber would never have worked because the drivers wouldn't have had a clue where you wanted to go. But that technology did exist, and so Uber happened. And at first, Uber was great. Although, your mileage may vary depending on where you live, but around here, there's an app for a taxi now, and it's infinitely superior to Uber because the taxi drivers actually know what they're doing. That was largely the whole appeal of Uber and what allowed so many people to earn a living as an Uber driver, because anybody can be an Uber driver. Not anybody can be a taxi driver. Taxi drivers are regulated. There's a certain standard required in order to be licensed as a taxi driver. So the second the taxis got their own app that was the equivalent of Uber, I never touched Uber again because taxis are just so much better. And now they're cheaper than Uber as well, but that's an entirely different can of worms. Anyway, back on the main point here. Tech bros inventing stuff that already exists. So the original deal with Uber was, it was like democratizing the whole taxi experience. It was basically a taxi, just with an app. But then, then the tech bros decided, instead of you calling an Uber and it picking you up at like your front door and then taking you to the train station and dropping you off there, or wherever it was you wanted to go, instead of that, how about we have an Uber that sticks to a pre-assigned route? Like it goes from here to there, to there, to there, and then back. And then it just repeats that route. And instead of you calling for an Uber, You wait at certain predefined points along that route, and then you can get into that Uber with anybody else who was in it from a previous stop, and then you can just, get off at the part along the route that you want. Oh yeah, that's brilliant. Dude, you just invented buses. Except less convenient and more crowded. Awesome. So another thing that tech bros do, they keep reinventing trains, except worse. You ever heard of the Monocab? I'm not making this one up. I wish I was. The Monocab is a two-wheeled, gyroscopic, autonomous, battery-powered rail pod that uses those gyroscopes to balance itself on a single rail. So why a single rail? Well, because it means that if it's only using a single rail, then your monopods can be going backwards and forwards down the same single length of track, because, length of track has two rails, so you can have one side for monopods going one way and the other side for monopods going the other way. Sounds interesting. The whole idea was to reuse abandoned tracks. If a line's been shut down and abandoned due to lack of demand and the stations have been closed, you can breathe new life into them by installing these monopods. Okay. Yeah, so far, Jingles, this actually sounds like a good idea. Oh, I'm sure it does. But wait until you see how it works. And when I say works, I mean doesn't work. The whole idea here is that you've basically got what boils down to an autonomous Uber on a rail line with an app. So what happens is you go to one of these abandoned branch train stations and you stand on the abandoned platform and you get your app out and you call one of these monopods. And then you wait. And you wait. And you wait some more. And after about half an hour, this painfully slow rolling coffin trundles down the train line and you hop into this impossibly narrow seat right above a spinning gyroscope, and then you very, very slowly trundle off towards your destination at a pace that barely exceeds walking speed. And then you realise, hang on a minute, this is just a train, but they've made it worse in every way imaginable. And this is just one example of the many examples of how tech bros keep inventing trains, but worse. Oh, there's Elon Musk's Hyperloop as well. You've heard of this one, surely. Uncle Elon pitched this as a magnetically levitating train in a vacuum tube with a top speed of 1,200 miles per hour. It was going to change transportation forever. And it was technically feasible. I mean, it wasn't even a new idea. It was first floated in 1888, but the technology in 1888 just wasn't there to make it practical. Well, actually, the technology in 2026 isn't there to make it practical. Possible, yes. Practical, no. They very quickly realised that it would be prohibitively expensive and monstrously impractical to build these underground tubes and then suck all the air out of them to create a vacuum and then shoot these trains through them, because every time somebody wanted to get on or get off, they'd have to go through an airlock. And the consequences of a rupture in the vacuum tube were catastrophic. The maintenance would have been just nightmarish. So they very, very quickly dropped the idea of vacuum tubes and instead started focusing on maglev technology. That technology that doesn't exist yet. So, yeah, the Hyperloop. Trains, but worse. Because they don't work. And then, of course, Elon invented the subway, didn't he? You've heard of the Vegas loop? No? Again, I only wish I was making this shit up. So Las Vegas has a bit of a congestion problem because there's basically no decent public transport. Well, there's basically no decent public transport anywhere in America. But Vegas in particular is pretty bad. So Uncle Elon decided he was going to invent the subway. Except worse in every way imaginable. He called it the Vegas Loop. And it's real, it exists, and you can use it. Why you would want to, I have no idea, but you can. So what the Vegas Loop is a couple of miles of underground, incredibly narrow and claustrophobic tunnel, like single lane traffic, that you get into a Tesla, and they're not even autonomous, right? It's single lane, fully 100% enclosed, and they still don't trust the Teslas to be driven autonomously. Everyone has to have a driver. They could have built an actual subway, with subway trains to transport thousands of people at once. But no, you stand at the station at one end in a queue, waiting your turn to get into one of the Teslas that turns up, and then it drives you through the tunnel to the other end at an average speed of 30 miles an hour. Although during peak congestion times, the average speed is more like 15 miles an hour, because yes, you have congestion on this underground tunnel line, because of course you do. It's just another road with a single lane, except it's underground. Dude, you just invented the subway. Except worse in every way imaginable. Well, not wanting to be left out, Electronic Arts are inventing stuff that already exists as well. Electronic Arts just announced, and I'm quoting their press release here, they want to transform the way brands interact with their audiences. How is this happening? Are they creating authentic interactive experiences? That's another Electronic Arts quote, by the way. No. They're putting adverts on billboards in games. Yep, Electronic Arts just invented billboards. No, said Electronic Arts. That's not what this is. This is not mere vulgar commerce. No, this is all in aid of making the game world experience more authentic. This is player-focused and player-driven. We want to transform the way you interact with your brands. Battlefield 6 can hardly claim to be an authentic gaming world experience if you're not being assaulted with adverts for Adidas and Starbucks every time you turn an in-game street corner. Dude, calm your tits. You just invented billboards. Watch this space. It's only a matter of time before the next Battlefield map takes place in a giant abandoned and war-torn sports stadium where there's no running water or any kind of plumbing, but somehow the electricity to all of the advertising hoardings is still up and running to ensure that all of the frenetic, fast-paced gunplay can be punctuated with advertisements for BMW and Amazon Prime. This, of course, with the standard edition of the game, which you paid $80 for, but if you upgrade to the Ultimate Edition, you get to skip all of the ads. Well, not all of the ads, because Electronic Arts is a responsible publisher and they care about their players. So there will be mandatory water breaks every 15 minutes. And so if you're taking a mandatory 2 minutes out every 15, I mean, why not run a few adverts? I mean, you're a captive audience. They've got nothing better to do, right? Dude just invented billboards. What could possibly have brought all of this on? I'm sure it's got nothing whatsoever to do with the leveraged Saudi Arabian buyout of Electronic Arts that's going to leave $20 billion worth of debt on Electronic Arts books. Am I just being cynical again? Wouldn't it be easier to just make better games and sell them for a fair price? You know, the way Capcom do. I'm showing my age again, aren't I? Yeah. I'll show myself out. We're seeing this across the whole industry, though. Well, we're seeing this across the whole AAA industry. You know, instead of trying to deliver better, more exciting, decent products at a fair price, they're just churning out the same safe old slop and just looking for ways to squeeze more money out of you over it. Microsoft's CEO recently said that they haven't been monetizing their Xbox games properly. Microsoft are just about to sack more staff, close more studios, and cancel more games. Xbox just posted in May their worst sales in ever. There has never been a worse month for Xbox than May 2026. And this after they've announced that they're putting the price of Xbox Game Pass down, although not back to what it was before they raised the prices 8 months ago, or whenever it was. And despite this, they've still had their worst sales ever in the month of May 2026. So naturally, they respond to this in the month of June 2026 by raising the price of Xbox. Because in the middle of a global recession, when the cost of living has never been higher and people's earning power has never been lower, that's how you're going to convince people to snap up a brand new Xbox console and start paying for Xbox Game Pass. Raise the prices. Genius. Oh, no, that's not going to work, is it? We'll just fire people and close studios instead. I don't know what you're sitting there at the back looking so smug for, Sony. You're not getting away with it. So Sony, of course, famously in 2022 bought Bungie for $3.6 billion. A lot of money. Now, at the time, it seemed like a good deal because Destiny 2 was riding high in popularity. But before the ink was dry on the check, Destiny 2 started its long decline, and then 4 years later, when Sony eventually shut it down, and by the way, they've just fired everybody who worked on Destiny 2. They've even fired a couple of the people who were working on Marathon, but that's another story. But even at the point when Sony pulled the plug because they were not getting the return on their investment that they expected of Destiny 2 when they bought Bungie, I mean, it's your fault for overpaying. $3.6 billion. Get a life. But even at the point when they shut it down, Destiny 2 was still averaging anything between 50 and 100,000 concurrent players a day, depending on which day of the week. Obviously, more at the weekends. That's a healthy player base. But they've shut it down in order to focus on Marathon. Now, Marathon hasn't failed, despite what certain hysterical headlines might have you believe. It's certainly not been a runaway success. But it hasn't failed either. But, yeah, so Destiny 2, when they were shutting it down, was still getting up to 100,000 daily players. Marathon, the thing that Sony kept going at the expense of Destiny 2, has never had 100,000 players on Steam. The most it ever managed at its absolute all-time peak, like on the weekend of release, was 88,000. Now it averages anything between 10 and 12,000, with sometimes achieving 24-hour peaks of 15,000, or 15% of what Destiny was pulling in when it was dead. And this is what they killed Destiny 2 for, in the name of profitability. Now, yeah, I know, Destiny 2, aging game engine, aging infrastructure, blah blah, so on. 100,000 daily players. Marathon, brand new, all singing, all dancing. At best, 15,000 daily players. So one game got shit canned, and then Sony fired everybody who worked on it, and the other is being propped up. But the one they chose to prop up is the one that was only pulling in 15% of the numbers of the other one. I can't do this anymore. Honestly, I can't. It's just too tiring. I'm going to end on a high note. If you do not already have it, in the Steam Summer Sale right now, you can get Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 at a 60% discount. And they've even marked the occasion by including a free quest as free DLC with your purchase. That's one of the best games I have ever played, and right now you can get it for like $24. Or if you really want to push the boat out, big spender you can get the Royal Edition, which includes all 3 DLC story packs for $32. What an absolute bargain. And on that medieval bohemian bombshell, I think that's going to be it for today. I actually managed a lot longer than I thought I was going to in this heat. It's 28.5 degrees inside right now, and I have air conditioning. Honestly, please make it stop. It stopped being funny a couple of days ago. Anyway, that's it for today. Hope you all enjoyed it. Hope it's given you something to talk about in the comments. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.